with her tutu. Oh, I'm embarrassing you. I forgot. I'm so old, I forgot how it is to be a young lady like you. Get embarrassed. Nothing embarrasses me anymore. So in fact, I'm in the business of embarrassing like my kids and stuff. So thank you, Melissa, for allowing us to come here, for hosting us. We have been welcomed at UU churches across the country. And of course, my very first speaking event after my son was killed on April 4th, 2004, was at the Fellowship of Unitarian Universalists in Berkeley, or the Berkeley Fellowship of Unitarian Universalists. So 3 months after my son was killed, the Unitarian Universalists welcomed me to their service and gave me space to start airing my opposition to Bush and to the wars and my pain. And I didn't know at that time where to put it. So it was really nice to have that community welcome me. And I want to welcome Charlie Hall. I thank Charlie Hall for inviting Tour de Peace here and for organizing all this stuff. We really appreciate it. Did you find us on Facebook or something, Charlie?
Kind of. I've been following since before you started.
Okay, great. And so Charlie invited us here to Kent, and I guess he made the arrangements for our wonderful vegan dinner we had and for our housing arrangements. Thank you, Bonnie. You might not recognize Bonnie. She's dressed like a muggle right now. She was at the Mugwort School earlier, dressed as a professor. And is that your partner next to you?
Andy.
Hi, we didn't meet Andy yet. Hi, Andy. We need the Wi-Fi password. It's not working. And also my team. Where's my team? I have one of my teams over here. This is Dan Levy. He was from Portland, Oregon when we started the tour. I guess he's gonna go back to Phoenix, Arizona. And he's the photographer, co-bike rider with me sometimes. And Malcolm Chaddick from Portland, Oregon. He's the driver of the support vehicle. So we've had people come and go, but these of us three are the ones that have been on it since April 4th. And in fact, Malcolm and I were on the planning committee since January. So we've been living this for the entire year of 2013, Tour de Peace. We're very grateful for the support we've been getting along the way. From Sacramento, California, our first stop, to today in Kent, Ohio, our most current stop. Last night we were in Columbus, and obviously if you know how far Columbus is, I didn't ride my bike from Columbus. And there was a lot of really bad weather today anyway. So Columbus was an add-on. People in Columbus say, hey, you have a day off. We don't want that to happen. Can you come to Columbus? And of course, we were so happy to go. There's been very few communities in Ohio that since my son was killed, I haven't been welcomed in. So this is my second time in Kent, and I was here, I believe, 6 years ago for the 2007 May 4th commemoration. And I was honored to be welcomed into the Kent State May 4th family, and I was honored that day to stand in Allison Krause's place. At the time that they were slaughtered. I find it interesting that on campus it's called the May 4th Memorial. That sounds kind of innocuous, doesn't it? It's like some campuses might have like the September 21st Memorial. It just doesn't convey really what happened that day. But the memorial, of course, I think is very moving and very appropriate. So it's nice to be back in Kent. So thank you again for inviting us here. what am I doing? Like, I ask myself that, like, 50 times a day. Why am I riding my bike across this country? And we started on April 4th. It was the day it was the 9th anniversary of my son's death. And of course, you know me, most of you know me, as a woman who set up camp in front of George Bush's ranch in Crawford, Texas, in August of 2005, right? Hello? Is this thing on? I know I was just in Detroit. You can barely talk over the audience in Detroit. So come on, you guys, let me know you're out there. Come on. So if I ask you right, respond. Okay? Say wrong or right or whatever. And so anyway, it's okay to laugh and clap, and this is a UU church. It's okay to be an atheist here. So, you know, it's okay to laugh. I'm not going to cuss though, because we have young people here. I'll try not to. And so anyway, most of you guys know me as a woman who set up a Camp Casey in Crawford, Texas in the summer of '05. And the one who kept going back and going back. I even had to buy property there because they passed Cindy Sheehan ordinances. They were literally called Cindy Sheehan ordinances, where there was no more camping or eating or sitting in the ditches in the county of McClellan, which Crawford is in. And we challenged those ordinances and we won. We proved that they were unconstitutional. So the law they named after me proved unconstitutional. So anyway, you know me as a person who stalked George Bush. Literally. And I was in D.C. many times in front of his house. And I know I used to take the bullhorn and I'd, you know, encourage him in the strongest ways possible to end the wars and stuff like that. And I know that he could hear me because somebody wrote a book about the Bush presidency. And it talks about me in that book. It says there was a meeting in the Oval Office and all of a sudden over the bullhorn they could hear Cindy Sheehan. And so I know they could hear me. So I still bullhorn in the White House. I made it a verb. I've made bullhorning a verb. And so, yeah, so very famously was against Bush and against Bush's policies. However, I discovered along the way, and quite late in life, that the problems are not of a political nature, a political party nature, or a personal nature. They're a systemic nature, right? It's policies. Our institutions and military-industrial complex are driven by somebody else's policies. And the president is just in charge of, you know, being the spokesperson for those policies. And so once I started realizing that and calling out some Democrats the same way I criticized Bush, then coverage of me started evaporating, right? Right? You guys might not know. Say, I don't know. Right, wrong, or I don't know is a valid answer. But coverage, news coverage, even in the so-called liberal news, evaporated. I have right-wingers all the time email me and call me a hypocrite. And they say, you know, you used to be so vocal against Bush, but now that your guy Obama's in, we don't hear anything about you. Well, I wasn't on the ballot here. And so anyway, first of all, that's a misconception. I'm not a Democrat. You know, I became an independent in 2007, political independent. I've always been a little independent, but I became a political independent. And so then I ran against Nancy Pelosi as an independent. And you guys must have been at one of my other speeches. Whenever, you know, in 09 when I was in Ohio and Farmer Jack was here. What happened to Farmer Jack?
Right here.
Oh, there you are. Farmer Jack was at one of those speeches. Every time I said Pelosi, I made my audience system. Leah remembers. And so anyway, I've never stopped. Why would I stop when the things are still happening? The wars are still going on, in some cases expanding and adding. Obama has increased drone bombing 500% over Bush. And those are real numbers. Those aren't if he's president for 8 years. Those are real numbers. He's increased oppression of our civil rights. He's a constitutional lawyer. He's saying it's okay to assassinate Americans without their due process. The military is persecuting Bradley Manning. That's all under Obama. And so why would I stop when things that I was protesting haven't stopped? So that's what I asked the right-wingers. You know, first of all, you could do a 10-second Google search on me and find out I haven't stopped. And that's what I asked them too. If you took the time to find my email, then you must have also seen that what you're saying is just completely moronic. Well, a lot of times I correct their spelling and grammar. And then I just send it back to them and tell them to send me a clean email so I could actually read it. And then say, you know, a lot of the policies that I protested under Bush, you supported. Now you're not supporting Obama when he's doing the same things. I said, I wonder who's the hypocrite here. It certainly isn't me. I've been consistent with my principles. And so I've done all these things. I've run for office. I've been arrested several times. I mean, 20 times probably altogether, but at least 6 since Obama's been president. I got to catch up a little bit there. And I was banned from the White House in 2010 for 4 months. Yeah, I was the first one. You can clap. I was the first person they ever gave a stay-away order from the White House. They do it in Congress all the time, but I was the first one for the White House. And, like, I've never been invited there, you know, and so I've never been in it. But they said, if you cross this line, you're going to go to jail for 6 months. Right? And, right? Well, you don't know. That's what they told me. That's what they told me. And, yeah. And so, anyway, I've been doing all these things. I have a podcast called Cindy Sheehan Soapbox. I've written 7 books. 4 since Obama's been president. Still traveling the country, you know, talking about Myth America. Farmer Jack brought my book, Myth America, the 20 Greatest Myths of the Robber Class and the Case for Revolution. I haven't stopped. And it seems like there's little movement in the movement. You know, and so it's very frustrating. You know, it's frustrating and criminal what's happening in washed up D.C., as I call Washington, D.C. But what's frustrating is the lack of opposition to what's happening in washed up D.C. And so I decided to ride my bike across the United States instead of flying, because usually, you know, I'm flying from the West Coast to the East Coast back to the West Coast.
We're flyovers.
Yeah, that they don't let other people, because they know that there would be a big outcry about it, if only from me. So anyway, yeah. And I have come on a Myth America tour talking about revolution, a grassroots community-based revolution, a revolution of what Martin Luther King Jr. called a revolution of values. And that's, I think, where the solution lies. The solution lies here in Kent. The solution lies in Columbus, Bowling Green, I'm going backwards, Toledo, I don't remember what day it is today, Toledo, Detroit. That's where the solutions are, and the solution is community. And so instead of flying over, I'm like biting off this country 50 miles at a time and going really slow and taking time really slow, like super slow. I couldn't, you know, I might walk a little faster than I actually ride my bike, but really slow. And it's to meet in places like this, talk to people like you, and say that our activism has to be based on our core principles. We can't have to stop, I'm not including people here, including like everybody in the country. We have to stop these mental and ethical gymnastics to try to fit our principles with the policies that are coming out of Washington, D.C. You know, and I see people justifying the things that are happening under the Obama regime that would be super annoyed and loud and in the street if a Romney were doing it, or if a McCain were doing it, or if they, you know, Romney, McCain, Bush would be doing it, but there would be louder opposition to it. Right? I think the anti-war movement in 05 and 06 really inhibited Bush's policies of further war in the Middle East. However, Obama gets in, and then there's Libya, and then there's Yemen, and Africa. You know, he's in we now have, the U.S. now has troops and drones in 35 countries in Africa. You know, only our first African-American president, man of color, could get away with that. And so I think the purpose of partisan politics is to demobilize movements. You know, for 4 to 8 years, we're super active against whatever person's in that we don't like, and then lo and behold, every 4 to 8 years, mostly every 8 years, the party changes, and we just switch. You know, it's like being in World Wrestling Federation. I used to watch this with my son, Casey, and I think they call it WWE now. It used to be WWF. But the World Wildlife Foundation or whatever said, hey, we have that, you have to have something else. And so they changed it to WWE. But anyway, I'd watch it with Casey. And he was still watching it when he was 24 years old. And I would just do, Casey, we're going to have a little check. I'm checking in with you. You know this is fake, right? And he'd go, oh yeah, Mom, but it's like soap operas for guys, and I like it. But I would like watch it, and one day, like 1 week I'd watch it, and Bret the Hitman Hart would be a good guy. And then a few months later I'd watch it, and Bret the Hitman Hart would be a bad guy. I'd go, what happened to the Hitman? And you know, and this is what happens in Washington, D.C. You know, it's entertainment. It's propaganda. It's intentionally using partisan politics and wedge issues to divide us and have us support things we don't what is so inspiring to me is there's like, since I started this bike ride, I like check my email and check the computer at least once a day. You know, you're bombarded by scandal and war and, you know, 1,000 troops on the Syrian border and, you know, all this stuff. Constantly bombarded. But my idea that day is to get from point A to point B. And while I'm getting from point A to point B, I'm outside and I'm looking at these wonderful things like murals, like scenery, you know, like buildings, you know, things that you would never see from the air or see zooming by in a car. So I'm consumed with the moment. And I'm not as frustrated as I was when I left on April 4th. You know why? Because we're coming to your communities and we're seeing how people are turning their backs on the institutions that are oppressing us and turning towards each other in community. And that's where we should have been all along, right? I know I have some of my water. And so it's given me so much hope. I felt so dejected. You know, after the 2012 elections, are you bringing me water? There's Dan. Thank you. There's Dan. There's Dan. After the 2010 election, I'm always concerned about rings. After the 2012 elections, I'm sorry, what year are we in? I was so dejected because I ran for vice president with the Peace and Freedom ticket, and there was Jill Stein of the Green Party. There was a Libertarian running that got on the ballot in almost all 50 states. There were, in California, there were 25 people on the ballot running for president. And I don't know how many there were in Ohio, but I saw that Romney and Obama combined got 98.4% of the vote. Only 1.6% of the voters rejected that system. Rejected the two wings of the war party. Rejected the two wings of what my friend Gore Vidal, who we lost last year, called the Bankers Party. Only 1.6% of the people who voted said no. Everybody else said, yeah, we agree. And that's what you say, I think, when you vote for a person. We agree with your policies. We agree with the agenda of empire. And so, I'm sure a lot of people voted for Obama and don't like a lot of the things that he's doing. But you have people to choose from, I think, that more match my values. So I saw that and I was so dejected. It's like, what the heck are we going to do? As long as people stay chained to the partisan politics, and if you go vote, that's one thing. But you have to spend your life between elections working for the things you care about. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, voting is just like a small part of what we should be doing. It's the tiniest part of what we should be doing. Unless you live in California. But you guys don't. And I'm going to be running for governor of California in 2014. Thing to be doing next year. But I'm not running as a Democrat or Republican. I'm running, Peace and Freedom Party. And so what this is doing is also this ride across the country is preparing me for coming to meetings like this in California to tell people things are the way they are now and they're pretty crappy, but they don't have to be like this. We, as a people together, working in community, can change things. we need to make the world a better place. How do I know this can happen? How do I know that things don't have to be this way? First of all, I was born and raised in California, and I was raised in a state where university was free to everybody who was a resident of that state. I graduated high school in 1975. I could kick myself every day for not going straight to university. Because I went to UCLA later in life, when I was like 35, it was about $500 a quarter, which is still a lot. Today, if I wanted to go back, it's almost $5,000 a quarter. So why do our young people join the military? Because there's little opportunity for them. 1 in 4 young people are unemployed, that's 25%. University is prohibitively expensive. And so I lived in a California that had a social safety net, where corporations pay a minimum 35% in taxes, where today they pay a maximum, if they pay anything, a maximum of 13%. And our Democratic governor keeps saying, we have a budget deficit, so we have to balance the budget not by raising taxes on the wealthier corporations, but by saying we need to cut services to elderly, to students, to the sick, to those who are already the vulnerable ones. Where no, we don't have to do that. You know, we can make the people who have been exploiting our labor and exploiting our resources, we can make them pay more than their fair share. Because there has been a situation when they have been getting away with paying hardly anything, and they've been reaping the benefits of our government and of our society. So anyway, we have to convince our neighbors in our community that we know most people today are struggling. They're struggling working several jobs, or they're struggling to find a job. They're struggling to not be evicted or foreclosed upon. You know, they're struggling to get health care. And it's a constant struggle. But how about if we join together in community and struggle together for positive values? Things that make healthy communities, not sick communities. So that's why we're crossing the country. And when we get finished on July 3rd, we say Turtle Pieces about the journey, not the destination. You know, I've been to Washtenaw, D.C. Dozens of times. And it's very malignant there. I don't like to spend that much time there. But this time I'm spending a few hours. And then I'm going to Baltimore and flying back home. You know, because it's not the destination, it's being here and talking to you. And when we get back and reevaluate and evaluate what we did on Tour de Peace, we're hoping that we can keep our communities connected. Because we have a beautiful opportunity these days to stay connected, no matter where in the world we are. Right? And so we make these communities in Kent, and not make them, but visit them, bring people together. You're already doing things. It's not like we're going to come here and activate you. You're already active. But it's bringing people together to do the struggle together. And then we can have these communities and then connect them together, because I think change is going to happen community by community by community, state by state by state. And once we spread across the country, there's only one way to go but up. You know, we have been, for decades, trickled on, right? And it hasn't been anything positive. We've been trickled on with their scraps, their exploitation, their pollution, their destruction of the environment, their GMOs in our food. They're poisoning the planet, they're poisoning my grandchildren, and I'm not going to put up with that. I'm not going to put up with them poisoning your grandchildren. is a very beautiful thing to be doing, and that's why my hope has been restored on this bike trip. So thank you very much. I think we might have time for questions and/or comments. Charlie? Yes?
Time?
Yeah. For questions and/or comments?
That's a question for Susan.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to do a commercial. I have a website and a blog called Cindy Sheehan Soapbox and a podcast, and I send out a newsletter once a week, but it's also about what we're doing on the tour right now, because that's mostly my activism. So if you would like to get a regular update on Tour de Peace, sign up for our list here. Just your name and your email is enough, but I tell people, oh, look, they did a really good job in Columbus last night. I always tell people, if you really want to be on my list, you have to write your email legibly, right? If I can't read it, I can't put you on my list. But look at all this neat penmanship that I got in Columbus. So I'm going to pass this around. I'm going to start with you, Ken.
Thank you.
And also, Tour de Peace is, of course, you're in church. When have you ever been in church where someone hasn't asked you for money? And so we are, it costs money to do what we're doing. We do have a support vehicle, support and gear vehicle. And a lot of people go across the country without one, but I don't think I could have done it. It has been indispensable for us to support us getting across the country. So I was thinking next time I might walk and have bikes as my support vehicle. So if anybody wants to sign up for that trip, that probably will be longer than 3 months. So I'm going to pass, this is my actual bike basket, and I'm going to have to get a new one because it's kind of getting worn out when I get home. I don't have a car. We didn't talk about the environment. You know, about 6 or 7 years ago, I sold my car because I was feeling very guilty for participating in the fossil fuel economy that contributed to the death of my own son. And that's why I stopped paying my taxes, because I felt guilty that I had funded this empire. You know, not only did I pay for my own son's death, but as a worker my whole life, how many deaths did I fund? How many torture sessions, prisons, you know, other oppressions did my money go to? So, I have these ideas, and I talk about these things, but I always really try very hard to live my life based on my core beliefs. And so I sold my car, and I've been cycling, walking, or taking public transportation since. And going across this country, I have been very aware of the lack of protected bike lanes. You know, in Arizona, we even had to go on the interstate. We had to ride up on I-40. And, you know, the shoulder of an interstate is not a hospitable place to ride your bike. You know, there's trucks zooming by you, throwing stuff up at you. You know, their wheels throw shrapnel up at you. There's shrapnel on the road. It's very hazardous, but there's no road. There's no other way to get there. You have to get up on the interstate. We need protected bike lanes. We need protected covered pedestrian paths. We need light rail. We need better, cheaper, and more available public transportation. And if we weren't constantly giving these tax breaks and other incentives to fossil fuel companies to find more fossil fuels, fracking, offshore drilling, onshore drilling, all kinds of nuclear power, all kinds of dirty, dangerous power, if we weren't doing that, we could have fossil fuels. The Democrats will say we need to get off of foreign fossil fuels. Tour de Peace is saying we need to get off of all fossil fuels. So I'm going to pass this basket around. You can give whatever you can to help us support the tour. And what we have at the end, if we have any left over, we're dividing it between two charities. One works in Afghanistan and one works in Iraq. So I'm going to pass this around. Okay, I think you had a question. Yes.
Well, first I want to say that you're my age, and last year my husband and I went out to take down a bicycle, and I got myself close to where I can kind of walk. So I want to say cheers to you, because that's really something what you're doing. And then the other thing, has anybody here ever seen the link from the Galactic Federation of Light? Now, this may sound like a joke, but have you? Okay. They're supposed to be Palladian aliens, and their hosts are phenomenal. At first I was listening to them because they were just relaxing, and anyway, you have to hear the voice. It's like an alien speaking through a human being. But they say the same stuff you say. And I think it's
I'm not a Palladian.
I think it's funny that these people, I don't know, they do a beautiful job if it's a regular human being speaking for an outer space person, a Palladian. They do a great job of saying the same things you do and really help me like get out of the party idea of the parties that we have and just feeling just the love for the human being and the whole earth. And I think it's amazing that you and the Palladians are like walking side.
I think anybody that's trying to bring us together in community for healthy solutions, and this reminded me, I haven't thought of this for years. There's like supposedly this order of aliens in Australia, and they made me a high priestess. And I even got like a certificate. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what their, oh my gosh, I should remember because I'm a high priestess. What their, it's not the Palladians.
It might be, but it's called you can go on the internet, the Galactic Federation of Light. They have these lengthy links, and they're fascinating and very relaxed.
But then I went to Australia, and they actually had a little formal ceremony for my high priestess. I wonder if I have any benefits being a high priestess. The orders. I gotta remember that. I haven't thought of that in years. But yeah, anything we're trying to bring us in community for healthy solutions, I think is very positive. Ted.
I have just two questions. One is you mentioned, of course, bringing community together. Whatever happened to the Occupy movement? I was just reading an article in these times how the Obama administration has infiltrated the Occupy movement Secret Service agents and the infiltrators, but it was really moving, and they were against corporate structure.
Right.
And it's really amazing how it's disappeared essentially. The other question, maybe it's related to this one, is why is maybe these are self-answerable questions, but the media coverage that we get is terrible. There's no depth, and it's all boosting just the sorts of things that we've been talking about. What is not saying what we do about it? Am I right? I've written 56 letters to the editor, but somehow they don't seem to be making it.
Well, with the Occupy movement, now, that's a hard question because you just can't say there's one Occupy movement. You know, there's Occupy Wall Street. Most communities have their own Occupy. Like I was involved in Occupy Sacramento, and that has kind of morphed into foreclosure prevention, and many Occupies have gone into like foreclosure prevention. But the same thing that happened to the anti-war movement in 06 and 07. thousands of people in Washington, D.C. You know, hundreds of thousands of people in New York City. And my own example at Camp Casey, when we had like 17,000 people come to Crawford, Texas in 26 days, and thousands around the world of solidarity actions, you know, Camp Casey's and wherever, or vigils and things like that. That movement was kind of funneled into electing Democrats. I saw all the Democrats in Washington, D.C., for like almost 2 years. I spent so much time there in their offices. In 05 and 06, people like John Kerry, people like Nancy Pelosi, people like Hillary Clinton, do you remember? People like Barack Obama would look me in the face and said, Cindy, if your movement helps us get the House back, we'll help you in the wars. And so we did that. You know, I believed them. And so, of course, they got back the House, and Nancy Pelosi was famous Nancy impeachment off the table Pelosi. You know, war funding is on the table. The surge in Iraq is on the table, but accountability is off the table. So, and then in 08, for the presidential election, we wanted to, it was the 5th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq in March. We wanted to have another big mobilization in D.C., well, as big as we could get it. You know, at that point, we were, instead of hundreds of thousands, we were down to hundreds, or maybe thousands for a big thing. And, you know, the big organizations, the big so-called anti-war organizations like United for Peace and Justice said, no, we can't have a big protest in D.C. because we'll embarrass the Democrats. And so the anti-war movement was infiltrated by, you know, instigators and people who are trying to undermine it and demobilize it. The Democrats' election in 07, you know, made it like very sick. But Obama's election inauguration practically killed the anti-war movement. When I ran against Pelosi, I had 180,000 people on my email list. Because people were donating, every time people donated, we captured their email. And I think a lot of people saw it as an anti-Bush run, when to me, it was an anti-system run. You know, Nancy Pelosi is one of the wealthiest members of Congress. She's from a district in San Francisco supposed to be liberal, supposed to be progressive. And I found out that that's not true. And my next book coming out is called I Left My Marbles in San Francisco. The Scandal of Federal Electoral Politics. It's all about my run against Pelosi. But anyway, you can buy it. Yeah. When I get home, I'm going to get it all ready to go, and you'll be on my list, so you'll know when it's ready to. It's just like a booklet. It's not really a whole book. And my run for vice president with Roseanne Barr, which was like very super interesting. But what was I saying? And so in 09, I had 180,000 people on my email list. In 09, 3 days after Obama was elected, was the first drone strike in northern Waziristan that killed 36 innocent people. And I sent out a thing to my list saying, wow, it only took him 3 days to become a presidential war criminal. Bam, 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 people like erasing themselves off my list, saying, give him a chance. Why can't you give him a chance? I was like, I'll give him a chance, but why he didn't give those people in northern Waziristan a chance? And today, 5 years later, I don't even have 2,000 people on my email list. Yeah, but they're good people. They're 2,000 great people. So any other questions or comments? Yeah.
What was
What do I comment on the recent leaks by WikiLeaks, Bradley Manning, and the recent one, Snowden? Yeah. Well, first of all, I've been really busy riding my bike, so I'm not really paying that much attention to the NSA, Snowden kind of thing. I'm paying attention, but usually the time I'm spending riding my bike these days, I spend online researching. And so maybe that's why I'm a little happier. I'm not constantly in front of technology. I'm out like feeling I'm doing something really positive. But of course, one of our demands is for the administration to stop the persecution of whistleblowers like Bradley Manning. And to us, it's very interesting that people who blow the whistle are the ones who get prosecuted. But the people who actually committed the crimes get away scot-free. And that's the society we live in. That's the twisted society that we live in today. So not only do we want to stop the persecution of whistleblowers like Bradley Manning, we want real criminals to be prosecuted. Like, I don't know, George Bush, Dick Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, but the DOJ, the Department of Justice, is busy protecting those people while they're busy persecuting Bradley Manning and other anti-war activists and other whistleblowers. Of course, Bradley, it's interesting to me, Manning and Snowden really didn't tell us anything we didn't know, right? Oh my gosh, so really the government's listening to our phone calls? War crimes are committed in war? So it's just super interesting to me, and we'll see. I mean, Nixon, his presidency was brought down by spying on one person. And so it's just kind of interesting. Where is it going to go? 56% of Americans think it's okay. What? And so that's the thing that frustrates me. You have to have probable cause that somebody is committing a crime to get a warrant. Not just have this blatant, this program of gathering everybody's information. So to me and then we're spying on ourselves. We're putting all our information on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and, I say it in my speeches. I'm sure there's somebody here busy writing down everything that I say, or, writing it down. Oh, you're the person. Yeah, okay. I'm just kidding you. So anyway, yeah, I'm looking kind of forward to see where all this stuff is going to land. But like I said, what's happening here to me is more important than what's happening out there. You had a question?
I'd be interested to know what you think of President Truman's comment. It was quoted what he said. He said, "There's nothing new in the world except the history that you do not know." And I think that is true of our leaders, but that is true also of all of us. And that quote of Truman's was in the book All the Shah's Men, which is a book that came out about the overthrow of Mossadegh.
All right.
And in there, here is a man, Mossadegh, elected democratically.
Right.
And we began to move to the dark side at that very point. Again, how do you feel about that? Do we as a community, we don't know. That's what Truman had said. We don't know our history. And we make the same mistakes over and over and over again at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level. And we are in the huge mess we are in the Middle East because of that, as well as around the world. But what do you think?
That's an extreme extremely excellent point. I always say that, Bush and Cheney didn't invent what they did. Something that's been happening in this country really for centuries. And if you're looking at the Middle East, you also have to go back to the discovery of oil in the British Empire, British petroleum, and things like that too. Not just 1953 when the very fledgling CIA sent Kermit Roosevelt to destabilize and overthrow Mossadegh. So that's one of the reasons that I'm never going to shut up, until I can't talk anymore. Because it's so interesting, it's not interesting, it's tragic that when I was young, our country was involved in, a terrible, egregious, unnecessary war in Vietnam. Before I was born, it was Korea, and so we kind of I graduate from high school, I become a young mother, the lessons of Vietnam seem to be in the past, and all of a sudden my son joins the military and the same thing happens to him. So we can't ever let the people, I don't think, I'm not excusing the higher-ups in the government or, the puppet masters. They know exactly what they're doing. They learn from history. They learn what works for them, and they repeat it. They learn the propaganda. It's just like nowadays you just replace Saddam Hussein with Gaddafi. You replace Iraq with Libya. And just have the same propaganda. And so that's what's frustrating is I think this understandable need to trust our government, but it's not trustworthy. And we have to, if the government says anything, the representatives in government, I immediately don't believe it. That's the way I am until I can prove myself wrong or prove myself right. And so I check, I do independent verification if the government is saying something. I immediately, and that's I think the place we should all start. And then, maybe once in a while we prove ourselves wrong. So that's a very valid point. And not only do we not know our history, but a lot of times we think it's necessary to reinvent the wheel. To create groups or institutions locally or whatever that already exist. Or to learn from our elders. Not to discount what our elders have to say, but to sit with them and learn from their experience like indigenous people do. Right? So yeah, that's a very, very valid point. But one of the reasons I go and protest George Bush still. But I think that it's more important to highlight the current administration. But Return of Peace made a 2,200-mile detour to go from Gallup, Mexico to Dallas to protest at the Bush Library. And we call it a library because they're trying to bury the lies. And so people say, oh, don't you know Bush isn't president anymore? I was like, yeah, but you know what? We can't forget what they did, and they can't forget that we haven't forgotten what they did. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So